When I was in school, grade school, high school, and college, I was a C student. Now, the only problem with that was it drove my parents crazy. In grade school and high school, we got our report cards every 6 weeks. And every 6 weeks, I'd bring my report card home and go through the same routine. I'd come home from school and hand my report card to my mother, and she would start on me. And then 3 hours later, after my father got home from work, he would start on me. Now, my parents had a number of weapons in their arsenal, and on report card days, I could always be assured that they would break out their favorite two, which were, number one, to compare me with my cousin Rusty, and number two, hit me with their favorite statement, which was, "You're capable of straight A's." Every 6 weeks, "You're capable of straight A's." I don't know where they got that. I never made straight A's, not even close. And one thing I want you to know is that even back then, I was a positive thinker. My attitude was, there are 2 grades worse than a C. My parents were negative thinkers. They focused on the fact that there are 2 grades better than a C. The way I saw it, my parents were looking at the glass and seeing it as half empty. And the torment over my being a C student extended beyond my household. At my high school, when a student entered his or her junior year, you had to sit down with the school counselor, examine your past academic performance, and talk about your future. Now, this particular counselor we had at our high school was rather pompous, and he just loved using big words. And when I went into his office, he started using this word that I'd never heard of before. He started talking percentile. And it was percentile this, percentile that. And what he told me in so many words was that it was students like me who gave other students the opportunity to be in the upper percentile. Now, he pulled out this chart that had this line running down the middle, and over on the left-hand side were the respective grade point averages, with 4.0 at the top descending to 0.0 at the bottom, and aligned with that over on the right-hand side were the probable jobs or vocations that you could hope to get based on the grade point average. For example, over on the left-hand side, for grade point averages of 3.5 and above, aligned with that over on the right-hand side were jobs like doctor and lawyer and corporate executive. Now, as for me, what this pompous high school counselor seemed way too happy to point out was that my particular grade point average almost qualified me for bus driver. And the torment over my being a C student extended beyond my high school. After high school, I was dating this girl who had this, or after high school, I enrolled into the small college, and I was dating this girl who had this dark secret that she didn't tell me about at first. But in her defense, it was one of those kind of dark secrets that you just don't drop on somebody until you've been dating for a while. One day she sat me down, and she had this look on her face like she was either going to break up with me or confess to me that she was an axe murderer. Well, what she had to tell me was even worse. She confessed to me that she was one of those Phi Theta Kappa summa cum laude types. And as she was sitting there confessing this to me, I was sitting there thinking, oh, great. You know, there are just not that many around. Lucky me, I think I'm falling in love with one. Now, the dean at our college greatly admired this summa cum laude that I was dating. And one day he told her, he said, "You are a rising star, and you're going to be a great success in life. But I don't know about that boy you're dating." True story. Now, earlier I mentioned my cousin Rusty, who happened to be exactly my age. And, oh, Rusty was the perfect child. And Rusty made straight A's. Each time, every time. Every 6 weeks when I bring home my report card with my glorious C average, I got to hear about Rusty and his straight A's. And to my delight, I got to hear about Rusty in between report card days. In the small community where I grew up, I walked 5 blocks to school, and my father's business was just 2 blocks further, so on many mornings, we would end up walking together. And guess what? On many mornings, I got to start my day off hearing about Rusty on the way to school. It got to where I would deliberately leave my house 5 minutes earlier than my father just so I wouldn't have to hear about what a great success Rusty was going to be. Now, the things about Rusty lectures were this. They were both predictable and unpredictable. Predictable. Well, every 6 weeks when I'd get my report card. Predictable. When I would hear my mother on the telephone with Rusty's mother saying, "Oh, Oline, I'm so happy for you. Yes, Rusty is such a wonderful boy." When I would hear that, I'd grab my ball glove, fly out the back door, and stay gone until dark. Now, I knew what I was going to face when I got home. It was predictable, and it was inevitable. However, by staying gone until dark, I could avoid the inevitable for as long as humanly possible. Rusty lectures were predictable or unpredictable. Unpredictable. Walking to school with my father in the mornings, we'd be talking about a whole lot of nothing when, out of nowhere, here came a Rusty lecture. Unpredictable. At the dinner table, we would be eating in silence when, out of nowhere, here came a Rusty lecture. Unpredictable. In the car riding home from church on Sundays, when out of nowhere, here came another Rusty lecture. And the preacher hadn't even preached on Rusty. Now, when we entered high school, Rusty not only continued making his straight A's, but he got a part-time job after school to save money for his college tuition. See, Rusty's father was a milkman. He got up at 3:30 every morning and drove his milk truck from house to house delivering milk, and he told Rusty that he might not be able to afford college. So Rusty worked part-time during school and full-time in the summers. It was the perfect little money saver. And I got to hear about that too. And now the story gets better. In our senior year of high school, Rusty received a full 4-year academic scholarship to the University of Alabama. And I got to hear about that too. And now the story gets a whole lot better. Remember I told you that Rusty worked part-time during school and full-time in the summers and saved all this money that he would need for his college tuition? Well, with a full 4-year academic scholarship to the University of Alabama, he didn't need to spend all that money that he had worked for and saved on college tuition. So he went out and bought himself a brand new supercharged Pontiac GTO. And I got to hear about that too. Now, you think that's the end of the story? Oh no. Oh no. Rusty graduated summa cum laude from the University of Alabama and got a job with a top engineering firm. And his salary was the largest salary that they had ever offered a graduating senior. If you all are sitting there predicting that I got to hear about that too, well, your crystal ball is 2020. 4 years after college, I started my own business part-time while working full-time for my employer. I started my own business on January 2nd, and by June of that year, I had almost made as much money with my part-time business as I would have with my full-time job. So I quit my full-time job to focus solely on my own business. My wife and I lived in a 2-bedroom mobile home, and I used the spare bedroom as my office, thus saving a lot of money on overhead. And I did a lot of marketing on the cheap, and my business took off. And I was making a lot of money for a 25-year-old. Now later that year, I was about to make my customary trip back home to spend Thanksgiving with my family. And I called my mother and father and I said, hey, I just want to show a little gesture of thanks. See, my parents had never eaten in an upscale restaurant. My parents' definition of fine dining was eating supper at Earl's Barbecue. So I called him and I said, I just want to show a little gesture of thanks. I'm going to take you to the fanciest restaurant in Birmingham. Now, quit looking at me like that. Fancy restaurant in Birmingham is not a contradiction in terms. We went to the fanciest restaurant in Birmingham, and it was fancy. They had the dimly lit chandeliers, and the waiters were wearing tuxedos, and they had the white tablecloths and linen napkins. They rolled this fancy burner up to our table to cook our steak Diane. My parents had never had steak Diane. It was fancy. Now, during the middle of the meal, being the smart aleck that I am, I started doing this obvious looking around the restaurant. And I said, I don't see Rusty with his parents here tonight. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I thought I would have gotten a little chuckle. You know, a little, yeah, son, we're proud of you chuckle. But I got nothing. My parents did not flinch. The expressions on their faces did not change. They just continued eating their food as if I'd said nothing. Now, when my father was finished with the bite that was in his mouth, without looking up from his plate, he said, son, that's not funny. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, there's what you would like to say, and then there's what you do say. And when my father said, son, that's not funny, what I would have liked to have said was, no, Dad, that's not funny. That's downright hilarious. That's not what I said. What I did say was this. I said, sorry, Dad, that was just my feeble attempt at humor. Why wasn't that funny? And my father said, son, Rusty got fired from his engineering job. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, there's what you would love to say, and then there's what you do say. And when my father told me that, or when he said, son, Rusty got fired from his engineering job, what I would have loved to have said was, is that right?